Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at a new lens from Viltrox. It's their APS-C autofocus 15mm f1.7 prime lens, and it's going to be available for the Fujifilm, Nikon, and Sony E-mount cameras. And full disclosure, Viltrox did send a Fujifilm copy out for me to review, but I haven't been paid or sponsored, and as always, I'll give you my honest and fair opinion. All right, first let's start out with the fact that this lens retails for just $239, which makes it a relative bargain in the autofocus prime wide-angle fast lenses. We'll see how it performs in just a minute, but let's talk about the build quality and overall feel. As you can see, it's a very handsome lens, relatively straightforward. It's all plastic construction. We have just a single focusing ring here. There's no function buttons or image stabilization built into the lens. We have the 58mm plastic ring thread here. We do have a nice metal mount here on the back with a USB-C port for updating firmware. So very straightforward. It does come with a minimal lens hood here, which just snaps on very securely. This is not coming off. I really like how secure this lens cap feels, or lens hood feels on the lens. And of course, we also get a rear lens cap. They also included a nice microfiber carry case here and the front lens cap. Now coming back to the focusing ring, it is very well dampened, feels really good when I'm turning it, and I didn't have any problems manually focusing the lens. Also, it's really lightweight at just 180 grams, and as you can see, it fits very nicely and very well balanced on an XH2, but of course, I think this lens will do very well on smaller cameras like the XT5 or the new XE5, and of course the XM5 as well. And just for comparison in terms of size, this is the ubiquitous Fujifilm 18-55 kit lens that many of you may already have. And as you can see, it's almost 2 centimeters shorter than the 18-55 kit lens, and it has this, roughly the same diameter, sharing the same 58mm filter thread size. So if you have some filters for your kit lens already, they're going to fit nicely on this just as well. All right, now let's talk about some of the optical properties of this lens. It is a 15mm wide-angle f1.7. So basically that means on a full-frame camera, this will be equivalent to, say, 23mm. The f1.7 is very, very bright, so it's great for low-light photography. And even though it's a wide angle, you still can get some shallow depth of field effects when you're close to your subjects, if you want that. Again, it is designed for APS-C cameras. The lens design is made of 12 elements in 10 groups with 9 aperture blades. This gives us a close focusing distance of roughly about 9 inches or 23 centimeters, which gives you roughly about a 0.1 magnification or a 10:1 macro reproduction ratio. Now, being a wide angle, it lends itself to architectural and landscape type photography. In those situations, I typically stop down to like f5.6, f8, sometimes f4. That way I don't have to worry about the depth of field, and I don't have to be quite as critical on my focus point. However, this lens goes all the way down to f1.7, so it gives you additional options if you want to go out early morning, like in the dawn or twilight hour, so that you can hand hold some shots and do the same kind of things with faster shutter speeds and or lower ISOs, which is really, really nice. You just have to pay a little more attention to your hyperfocal distance so that you get everything in focus that you want. That said, I think the lens performs best at f5.6, and speaking of sharpness in general, you know, at 1.7, the lens is tack sharp, mostly in the center and even out into the mid-range. It's really only when you start to get out to the corners that I did notice a little bit of softness there, but the detail is still very, very good. In my real-life images, I didn't really see any problems at all. But when I was shooting a test chart, that's when you can kind of notice these things. And the corners really don't get tack sharp until you get about f5.6 and f8. Beyond that, the fraction on a 40 megapixel sensor starts to set in at f11 and f16, and that's to be expected. Now, there are some minor corrections you may need to make in post-processing. I did notice that there is a pretty strong vignetting wide open at f1.7, and it gradually fades way up to about f8. But it never completely goes away, and it's not a big deal. It's easily corrected in post-processing. Maybe they'll have a firmware update for the JPEGs to correct for that, but with the raw images, you're going to have to make some adjustments if you want to. Personally, I don't mind it so much. I kind of like the creative look that I get from the natural vignetting from the lenses. Another thing is the distortion. Viltrox did a really good job in correcting and making this lens very rectilinear. There's some very, very minor barrel distortion with a little bit of pin cushion distortion out towards the corners, but it's very minimal, and I didn't notice it at all until I was shooting like this test chart to, to kind of measure those kind of things. And it's not a big deal, not a deal breaker. Actually, this lens is performing better than many wide angle lenses when we're talking about the raw images. Now let's talk about some of the other optical properties of this lens, like flaring. I found the flare control to be very good, especially if the point of light is in the center of the image. The rest of the image around that point of light, it still maintains really good sharpness and contrast. However, I can get this lens to flare quite a bit when the light is coming in from the side or in one of the corners. And that's really common for most wide-angle lenses, even pro lenses. It's very difficult to control flare when it's coming in from an angle. That said, it's very easy to minimize that flare effect if you want to by just tilting your camera left or right or up and down or just moving a little bit. As you can see in this image before and after, I just tilted the camera a little bit to the right and all the flare went away. But so you can do that, or you can use the flare to create an effect. Now, another optical property that we like to look at in wide-angle lenses are sun stars, and this lens really does a good job with that as well if you like that kind of thing. And you have to stop the lens down to about f11 and sometimes f16 to get the best effect, but you can get some really nice sun stars with this lens. Now, when it comes to coma, which is something you would look for if you're doing wide-field astrophotography like star fields and the Milky Way, this lens actually performed very, very well. I didn't get a chance to go out and actually do any wide field astrophotography in a dark sky, but in the few stars that I could see from my backyard, I was able to get very nice pinpoints of the light from the stars, and the coma was very, very minimal, so excellent performance there. And then finally, I looked at other things like some chromatic aberrations where you see purple and green fringing, or loco where there's some color shifts from one contrasty scene to another. And to be fair, I would say this lens was kind of average, right? At f1.7, I did notice some green and purple fringing. I also noticed some loca, but typically with a lens like this wide angle, you don't shoot wide open and very bright, high contrasty scenes. You're going to typically shoot like an f5.6. And at that point, this lens performs excellent, and most of those kind of aberrations have gone away. And even if there is a trace of that left, it's very easily corrected in post-processing. So let me sum it up this way. If you're looking for an affordable, no-frills, fast, wide-angle prime with autofocus, this is a no-brainer. I mean, even at double the price, I wouldn't expect better optical quality. This lens punches well above its weight. Maybe metal build and function buttons, aperture ring, weather sealing, even image stabilization. But at this price point, I can highly recommend this lens. And that's all I have for today. If you're interested in this lens, I'll have my affiliate links down below which support the work that I do here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.